Abby dude.
Yep. Good evening, good afternoon, good wherever you are, whatever time of day it is, whatever time of the week it is. Welcome to the iPace Driver Show, or the EV Driver Show. With myself, Garry Whittaker, iPace owner, and
of course myself, Abby dude. Welcome back to the newly named show.
Yeah, after last week's show, which got a lot of interest and a lot of comments. So everything we've talked about. So tonight we've got a really good interview coming up in a few seconds with Ian, the CEO of Osprey. Ingenious was, but Osprey has been for a year. Happy birthday, Osprey!
Happy birthday, Osprey! Yeah, of course.
You're old.
What a way to celebrate it, as we'll find out in a minute.
Yeah, and Ian's talking about a lot of news, but this is a really interesting interview, and we'll talk about a bit more about that in a second. We've also got some news about sales figures, which have been remarkable in the last quarter of EV sales. It's just amazing. And also we'll talk about things which have happened since my breakdown to my iPace, which have been rather impressive, actually, it has to be said.
Indeed.
So let's start off with the interview. So over to myself, talking to Ian. So Ian, thank you so much for joining us. Real pleasure to have you on again. I think we've spoken to people from, well, actually, Ingenious was before on the show, way back door on the first fully charged, I seem to remember, which was really good. And I know that a lot of our listeners and viewers are very keen on Osprey as a charging network. We always get very positive feedback, which is good to hear. And you've been in the news recently. You've had some really exciting news, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It is exciting. I think it's really about taking the Osprey network to the next level now. I think all the hard work that's gone in so far has been about establishing the network as a trusted, reliable place to go to get a charge on the go. But now we need to really raise our game and build the network that EV drivers want for the future. And that means, much bigger sites with much greater number of chargers, so that you're going to have that confidence that there will be a charger free for you, and that those chargers should give you the charge rate that your vehicle wants, whether you're in an 8-year-old second-hand EV, or whether you're in a brand spanking new Porsche Taycan top of the range. So that's the challenges we're now facing in terms of what is the future of public charging.
And that is a challenge. I mean, obviously, up to now, most of your sites have been 1 or 2 chargers. And has that been because of the limits on the actual supply to the venues?
Yeah, predominantly we've been installing, as you've seen, in retail environments. I mean, if you're looking at installing more than generally 2 50 kilowatt chargers, then in most cases you're going to max out the capacity on any low voltage cable in the area. And those low voltage cables are what normally run around retail units and shops. So as we look for more chargers, or indeed for higher power chargers, you're then getting into the point where you need a substation and a HV grid connection. And of course, the HV infrastructure is more scarce in towns and cities, and also the costs are much greater, but also it's significantly more physically difficult to install a substation within a retail site. But legally, it's a lot more complicated as well, and you need a longer lease term for the substation as well. So, yeah, look, it's a lot easier to install a 2-charger site in a retail environment than it is a hub of more chargers or of high power chargers.
But you've got a kind of workaround for this, or at least something which is helping you toward that, with these wonderful new Kempower chargers you're going to.
Yeah, I think that we obviously made the switch to the Tritium hardware earlier in the year, which is 75 kilowatt, which customers seem to love so far, and is fantastically robust and reliable. I think, and we will continue to use Tritium. Indeed, we've got some Tritium 175 kilowatt chargers going in, both in our partnership with Shell and on one of the hubs that we're building in London at the moment. But I think in some cases, what you really want is the ability to flex the power between bays, and that allows you to almost achieve a higher power charge rate, even when the power is not there to give it to every bay. And you're really giving the power to the bays that need it, which means, as you say, you can achieve more high power chargers than you would do otherwise.
Yeah, so that's what these Kempower chargers do. Basically, they share the power.
Yeah, yes. The way to think about it is the power modules are are away from the parking bays at a power stack at the back of the site. And what you have in the bays is truly a dispenser. And if your vehicle asks for 50 kilowatts, you get 50. If the vehicle asks for 150, you get 150, and it will flex it in that way. And of course, that it isn't, as we all know, it's not static. So it won't be that your vehicle always wants 50 and the person next to you always wants 150. As the power curve changes as you go through a charge, that will vary and will flex again, and the site will continue to respond to the demands from the vehicle.
Yeah. And I guess, I don't know what your figures show for this, but I guess it's quite rare for more than one person to turn up at exactly the same time on a charger.
Well, a year ago, yes, but no. I mean, today, if you look at the usage right now, it's crazy how the demand for public charging. I think what we're seeing is, I think previously the data was that around 97% of EV owners a year ago had home charging, and now with the sheer volume of fleet vehicles, of company cars that are going out there, you've got people who they haven't chosen their electric vehicle because they're maybe as passionate as you and I were about the green agenda and other things, or these are people who picked a car from a company car list at their work. And who may not own their home, they may not have a driveway, and they may not want to pay for a charger at home. So I think demand is rocketing for public charging at the moment. You only need to walk down your street and see the number of electric vehicles around. And look, it's funny, there's a bell curve of usage, but lunchtime and 6 p.m. they're certainly peak time. So we've got to get these sites of more charging numbers out there now, because the demand is certainly there.
And that's what you're doing.
And that's what we're doing exactly, yeah. So I think we announced the first 10 sites already, and we've confirmed the next 4 sites that are going into construction now. So we believe we'll build about 150 of these hubs with a substation in the next few years. We've already got a large share of those sites secured in terms of the substations, but they do take probably between 5 to 9 months to deliver these sites. And that's even before some of the delays we're seeing at the moment on some of the electrical infrastructure with the global shortages, really. So we'll announce them as and when we hit site. And we've got some really exciting projects to launch on some very important major roads in the UK.
But the first of these hubs is due fairly shortly, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got, so the first site is we finished construction. So that's the first Kempower hub site in Wolverhampton. That's at a brand new Costa Coffee site. So they're just finishing off the final touches on the new Costa Coffee outlet. And then we'll be open to the public, hopefully in the next week or so. But everything's being energised at the moment, which is fantastic. We are in construction on a large hub in South London. We've got another one on the A1 in Scotland. So there's a lot of sites where we're there now. We installed the chargers, and we should be going live hopefully in the next kind of 4 to 6 weeks on a few of these now. A lot of the time it is final bits of paperwork that needs signing around the substation and the wayleave, which just takes a bit longer than it was, putting a single charger in. With our great partners Marston's, with whom we had a very efficient machine running that allowed us to get those 100 plus sites installed at pace.
But I mean, to me, it's really exciting. The Wolverhampton hub, that's what people want now. They want hubs, but also the fact the way you've located them as well. You obviously correlating with coffee houses, and you've mentioned fast food as well on the blog post, and retail, I guess, as well.
Yeah, I think this is interesting. There are clearly 2 different types of EV charging sites. There are the destination sites where you would be stopping and wanting to spend 45 minutes or an hour anyway, and therefore we lower the charge rate to achieve that, or we have more bays because we can spread the charge across those bays. But most or many sites are used from an en route perspective, where you simply want to get a slug of power and go. Now, most of us don't want to stop twice. We don't want to stop for a charge and then stop 10 minutes later to use the loo or to grab a drink. So, the perfect site, of course, is a site that's got, cold and hot drinks, toilets, and by the time you've washed your hands and left with your drink, your car is charged and ready to go. And that's where these high power hubs now come in.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I think there's a historic thing with chargers, that they were in dark corners of industrial estates or whatever, and that has a bit of a reputation, which I think I've certainly heard from some of our more EV skeptical listeners in the past, that's one of the things they've seen where these chargers are, and they don't look very attractive for us. I think yours are going to be in much more attractive areas, and already are. I mean, the Marston's ones are very, very attractive areas.
Yeah, I think 3 years ago when we were starting to roll out, EV was so low on the landlord and the retailer's agenda. and it was really a test for them, so they would put it in a discreet place out of the way around the corner. Now we're very lucky, everyone knows that this revolution is happening, and electric vehicle charging is a core part of many landlord and retailer strategies now. So it's front and center, and I think we are pushing the landlords and the local authorities very hard to make these sites as best as they can be. There's still more that can be done. I think we get, very fairly so, lots of feedback about accessibility of bays and the space around them and curbs. And we ultimately, in many cases, we are going into somebody else's car park. So we do need, EV drivers to keep shouting as they are about the importance of accessibility and lighting and safety. But I think, to be honest with you, what we need really is legislation to say, look, this is the minimum standard for a new charging bay. If you think about the fact that 18 months ago, it wasn't the minimum standard that every charger should have a card reader. Madness. Yeah. So, we need to get to a point where if a landlord, retailer, council says we'd like to make some money or achieve our CSR aims with some charging bays, well then, guys, I'm sorry, you're going to have to make them wider bays with hatched areas without curbs and bollards, and that should be the standard, really.
Yeah, it should be, and also I guess that also comes into planning permission issues as well. I know one of your fellow competitors mentioned the restrictions from car parking from the 1950s being the standard.
I say, planning is a help to us, really, because we're building some sites at the moment where the planners have very smartly said, look, if you're going to build this new retail site, you have to have at least 8 rapid chargers, or at least, well, fantastic, because then that landlord is forced to go and run a procurement process, and they can pick between the fantastic operators in the market, like your Ospreys, your Instavolts, your GridServes. Fantastic. But and what they'll do is they'll say, we've got this one site, we have another 15 here. So it accelerates the rollout. So that's great from planning. But it's really people who own and operate car parks, they think of each bay as a revenue source. And the thought of, if they say to me, Ian, we need 8 bays, or we want 8 bays, and I say, that's great, guys. You need to give me 16 to make your 8 charging bays, or you need to give me 12. They're horrified. All the revenue we're going to do. So that's the challenge we've got now. It's around the financial value that landlords see in their existing parking bays.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's the challenge we're facing now. So we've got some landlord partners who are fantastic and are saying, look, we want to be seen as the leading landlords for accessibility, and we want your drivers to turn right into our site and park with you. So it's again, like with everything in this game, it's all about education at the moment, and there's a lot of miseducation and misinformation out there today.
And I suppose, again, as you said, with legislation, if the planning regulations were changed to say that if you have an EV charger, you've got to have enough space around it for accessibility, that would help as well.
That's a really good point. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be fantastic.
Obviously, one of my you've heard me say this before, but covering some sort of canopy over the top for wet weather in the UK is something which I'm always on about. And again, I know is a planning nightmare to get in, and also obviously a cost nightmare as well.
Yeah, I think it's less about the cost. I'm really excited. We've got the first canopy site, which we're going to start construction on in the next few weeks. It's on a pretty significant road in the UK, so can't wait to get that Halo site out there. And then to kind of set the tone for what we want to build going forward. The cost for us isn't a factor at this stage of the market. We're just trying to establish a brilliant experience for everybody, so that drivers and landlords want more Osprey sites. I think it comes down to we're in someone else's car park. When we're buying sites now, as we're doing, and building green and brownfield charging hubs, it's great, we can do what we like. But going into other people's car parks, they get concerns about obstructing the view of their tenants, brands and logos, and there's a small planning issue. But you've got to remember, a lot of the people that are building the charging infrastructure today, we used to build 100-foot wind turbines. This is not difficult to build. So it's a permissions piece, and it's trying to get your landlord partners come with you on the journey.
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of it from the landlord point of view, but that actually makes a huge amount of sense as to why that would be an issue.
And I think the other issue is that if you put a canopy in with a light, I'm afraid that if you have undesirable people in your car park, there's only one place they're going to congregate.
Yeah,
true. There are security concerns as well.
Yeah, I can understand that as well. Yeah, it's the unexpected factors, isn't it? Always the things you don't plan for.
No, and I think we all have a vision of what EV charging is, and we see the glamorous photos and the adverts. But the reality is these people are experts in running car parks, and they know what the real work they deal with. So we have to accept that and work with them on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I know I've spoken to a lot of EV drivers where we've all sort of said, well, we'd go to somewhere which was covered if we had the choice. If there's a choice of two local charges and one was covered and one wasn't, you'd probably go for the covered one.
Exactly, and we can feel it again as the weather turns today. We will.
Yeah. Indeed. But it's great. I mean, and also great. I mean, let's hark back to something you mentioned earlier, because the tritium chargers, I think that's quite an interesting move from your point. Is that something you're intending to retrofit on other sites, or is it something you? Because I know, for example, I'm in Peterborough, and we've still got one of your ABB sites here, which has had a few issues.
Well, very good question. So the Alton site in Peterborough will be retrofitting the tritium chargers to that site in place of the ABB units there. I think, to be honest, we've currently got three. If you take out the ABBs, we've got three different chargers. We have the Circ Control Rapture 50s, the tritiums, and the Kempowers. I mean, they're all fantastic. I think what we always set out to do is to put the right charge rate in for dwell time. So we've got over 200 Circ Control Rapture 50s at the Marston's estate, where people are dwelling for an hour, for business meetings, lunches, and etc. So that's the right charger for that. I think if you look at the Starbucks site in Gosport, we've got the Tritium 75Z, because there's a slightly shorter dwell time, and the same does apply to the Alton site. So yeah, we will be retrofitting in places, but it's not a case that we're ripping out chargers where it suits, where we've got the right spec in for the dwell time. I think if you look at some of the hubs where we're going to have shorter dwell times now, then we'll have to be looking at high power chargers as well.
Yeah, and dwell times is an interesting thing. I mean, it's something some of our listeners may not even have thought about, because they come from petrol diesel world, where you go up to petrol sump and plug in and fuel, but you actually make a special trip to that. Whereas with charging, it's usually en route or your destination.
I think the best user case to give as an example is a supermarket. I mean, we constantly have to fend off right now this debate about 350 kilowatt chargers, and everybody wants the fastest, most powerful thing. I think if you're at a supermarket, or even better, a cinema, imagine you've just come in towards the new James Bond film, and so if the PR says that we can charge your car in 28 minutes, great. Okay, so 28 minutes into your shop or into your film, you've got to go and move your vehicle.
Yeah,
that's not right. So you've got to get that charger. What you want is that when you leave the retail unit you're in, that by the time you leave, you've had a full charge or an 80% charge. That's really what we're trying to achieve. And of course, it's very different. And even to be honest with you, when we deal with some of the fast food people, we know that some of them will say, we have a fantastic trade from business meetings. We really try to keep people in for an hour, and therefore we sell lots of cakes and cookies and things to keep them in. And there's others that say, crikey, we're near the airport, we just want people through, in and out the door. So please, we don't want them dwelling more than 10 minutes. So it isn't even common across the same retailers. It really is site by site.
And I think it's an important thing from a non-EV driver's point of view, someone who might be thinking about getting EV, that it is a different mindset in charging, and usually that it's a way more convenient mindset. You turn up for where you want to go, and like you say, you get stopped for a coffee en route, and during that time you've got enough charge to cover the rest of your journey potentially.
Yeah, and we're going to, as more and more different locations get charging, it's going to become less and less of a concern. If you think about, there'll be a day when all of our train station car parks have slow chargers. Fantastic. Imagine you come back from your day at work, you get off the train and your car's fully charged. Fantastic. And you don't need to do it once a month, or once a week, or once a fortnight. So it's going to get easier and easier. I think if you crudely looked at the charging infrastructure that's in the ground right now today, it is not sufficient to allow everybody to make the transition. But if you are in a position that you are, and I am, and you know the rollouts that are happening, you've got great confidence that there's going to be more than enough infrastructure to get people on the road and charge.
Yeah, I think that's been my experience since getting into the EV world. That as I've seen the EV world grow, the infrastructure's grown to meet it. Maybe a slight lag, but it's got there. You make a very valid point, I think, on the slower chargers, the destination chargers, which I think have been. There was a big burst of getting them in from councils and the like a few years back, and it sort of petered out, and a lot of those haven't been maintained. And I think that's something which I certainly would like to see some growth on. Again, the cinema approach. I mean, 3 to 4 hours is normal time in the cinema. That's quite a long enough time to get a pretty decent charge on an AC charger.
Yeah, I think there are some fantastic operators out there today in the AC world, and they're really They've got some very big rollouts going on. I think it's a very different market to the rapid charging market, and the installation concerns are equal. So whether we're putting in a substation for a 12 DC charger hub, or whether we're putting in 4 AC chargers, it's unlikely you're going to get all the power you need from the building. So you're going to end up digging for grid connections and digging through car parks. And of course, you haven't got the throughput of kilowatts to make that cost effective. So it's not easy. Thankfully, there's lots of grants out there that are helping, or have historically helped a lot of local authorities. But I think, again, there's a maturity now in operators like, you've got your connected curbs, you've got your plug and go. There are people out there, EV Driver, doing, great rollouts across retail estates where the dwell time is right. So it's definitely coming. It's got a very different set of challenges that still needs to be overcome from a civil delivery perspective. But you've now got reputable networks that are experienced in doing that.
Good, and I guess you can work together with those networks if you've got a site which suits for that sort of thing.
Yeah, we've got a great relationship with the ones I've listed there, and we are certainly looking at how can we collaborate to help build each other's rollouts. Yeah,
that's brilliant. So you mentioned this Kempower rollout going out, and I think from a user point of view, that those devices look brilliant. I mean, it's so easy to use.
Yeah, I think that it's funny that. In a way, it is very simple kit, but there's a lot of complicated development that's happened in the latest hardware. But one of the most effective things is the cable management system of Kempower, which people love. And of course, it's quite visually exciting as well. But we get so many comments on why did you build the bays this way? And of course, we as the charge point network, we have to deal with the fact that the OEMs can't seem to agree on where the charging port should be. But with the Kempower system, and to be fair, with the Tritium unit, this is a thing of the past with these huge cables which can come out and makes it very easy for everybody to charge. We've been very lucky in the last 2 years where we've had a lot of the early adopters that have been the people trying to use our network have a higher than average level of technical understanding, which has probably helped them on their way whilst the charging hardware options have not been that user friendly. And now we need to build for the mass market, and I need to build a charging network that my mum and my nan could use with ease. And we need to get to a much more intuitive, simple charging system. And again, like the Tritium units, the Kempowers are certainly a fantastic step in that direction.
Yeah, and I seek out Tritium at the moment over perhaps ABB or even circuit control, because I know they're going to work, and I know they're going to be easy to use, and they're going to work with the iPace, which is obviously one of the criteria, because the iPace is a particularly challenging vehicle, I think, in some ways.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to the firmware collaborations between the different OEMs and the charge point manufacturers. So I think there are certain vehicles which the circuit control unit doesn't always connect with perfectly every time, and there are certain vehicles where maybe the charge point Inc. or the ABB won't connect with every time. But I think as you have shown, the drivers of those vehicles have worked out which units work. But we shouldn't be having that conversation.
No, we shouldn't.
Every charger works in every vehicle, but that's part of it's hard to deliver these sites like we do, but it's also part of our day job is to just keep running at pace with the firmware upgrades and the firmware issues to make sure that you can always get the charge you need.
And you do. I mean, Ospreys invariably work for me, even the circuit control ones, which I don't think many of the other circuit control networks do. So that's good.
We work really hard with circuit control, but also through Swarco in the UK, who run the circuit control element of the business. And we listen to every call. We look at every single piece of ZapMap feedback, and we make sure that if there has been an issue, we eradicate it so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with the circuit controls for a lot of the providers is that the cable lengths are very, very short for the iPace, and with bay positioning that can be an issue. Certainly I've had that recently on a couple of occasions, but I tend not to have that with the Osprey ones, because I think your bay positioning is slightly better, so I've got a bit more cable length to work with.
Yeah, look, we take on whatever bit of feedback we get, and I'm sure our earliest Marston sites back in 2018 were not the best, not the optimum design. Indeed, we are going back and improving that where we can, and we've got a fantastic relationship with Marston's where we can go and improve sites to make it better for customers. But you're right, it's all that's where the experience of having 200 sites and growing quickly helps you, because we've learned those lessons 2 years ago before the mass market got here.
Yeah, And full disclosure here, I'm one of your Osprey angels, so I'd like to give you feedback on stuff. And I think that program has been really good as well. I think that's been an excellent idea to actually get real experience from local people who are actually using those chargers all the time.
Yeah, and let's be honest, I'm so lucky to have an amazing team of highly intelligent, talented young people, but most of them live in London and work in an office in London. So whereas you all the general public are out there using our network on a daily basis in real life scenarios with commuting or with crying kids in the back. So we can't ignore that feedback. It's helped us get where we are today. And we've got the angels who live near certain sites that give us great feedback, but even on where we're looking at building new sites now, we're reaching out to our members now with some brilliant conversations with true user feedback. So it's great.
Yeah. And you can certainly see that from the interaction you've been having with the community over the last few weeks, and some of the YouTube videos you've been on and things, and the feedback you've got there. I think it's really good to see you responding so positively to things and taking things on. It's exactly what we want to see as drivers and owners of EVs.
I think that we're so lucky to have such an engaged audience base. Again, there's a lot of the 500,000 plug-in vehicle drivers are early adopters. They're very passionate about this, or they're very passionate about the sustainability agenda, and we'd be mad to ignore that and to not listen to it. So I think we're very, very grateful that we do receive such engagement, and when we get it wrong, we get stick as we should do. And I think the day we stop listening is the day that the tide will turn quickly, and we'll get a lot more. We lose company pretty quickly. So yeah.
Well, you're doing a good job at the moment. So just sort of shifting away from the EV enthusiasts to the EV skeptics and the people who, because we know a lot of our audience on the Digital Lifestyle Show, for example, are people who are considering EVs now, perhaps more so after the last few weeks with what's been going on. What would you say to them in terms of the experience they should expect now as an upcoming newbie EV driver? Will it be easy for them, basically? And I think it will be, but what do you think?
Yeah, I do think that, and this is where you have to give credit to the team at GridServe. I think the refresh of the hardware at the motor services has made a massive difference now for the general public making that switch, because I think in most cases that's where the general public will go first for a charge. So I think firstly, when you get into an electric vehicle now with the amazing model range that's out there, you look at cars now like the Ford, the Mach-E and vehicles. There are some amazing EVs out there that are better to drive, more fun to drive, better places to be than traditional vehicles. So you should definitely just go and hire one anyway. Then from a cost perspective, the tax benefits are amazing if you can get one through your work or through your salary sacrifice. So loads and loads of regions. And then there's all this tech, people like Omi and Octopus who are doing all the smart charging at night time. So there's financial reasons to do it. When you're on the road, I think what you've got now with networks like Osprey and Instavolt and GridServe and others is there is a baseline of reliability and quality where you should not be having issues anymore. And we who all did this 3 years ago, we took the pain. And now I think, there's a base standard of how easy charging should be with contactless payment and with reliability and with great call centers. So look, there will still be some issues, but I think in 3 months' time, there'll be a lot less issues than there are today. And in another 3 months' time, there'll be even more sites with multiple numbers of higher power chargers, and it's going to get easier and easier. So I think if you're skeptical, go and try it. And then the one big issue we still see every day is the lack of education that's given to drivers by the car dealers. Yeah. And that is a problem. And that's where we really need to find more effective ways of educating people on what driving EV is like, charging, how you need to charge the car every night and all these things. That's the bit we still need to get right.
Actually, interesting you mentioned that, because I was speaking to one of your competitors, and they were talking about whether they could actually provide some of that information at the point of charge points, because a lot of times these conversations about what's an EV's like are taking place at charge points, and if there was sort of an easy guide to EVs, sort of, or how easy it is to charge and that at the sites, it might encourage more people to sign up.
Yeah, I think if you look at Fully Charged Live as an example, you see some of the massive consumer brands now that are making big steps into the EV space. I think these are brands that people trust and will go to naturally before they've even heard of public charging or heard of Osprey. So what we're doing is we're working with them because they've got a much bigger voice than we have. We've got a brilliant partnership with Zoom EV, who are working with a lot of dealer groups to educate them and give them materials for their customers. But also some of the big insurance companies are about to make some fairly large announcements in the space. and they got huge access to drivers.
Oh, yeah.
They're the right place to do it, really. That's when you can hit millions of people with very clear, well thought out messages with let's be honest, big advertising budgets too.
Yeah, which is good. And I know some of those plans. I've heard some of those plans as well. So I think that's really exciting. That side of things, it's really good. One thing I just wanted to give a shout out before we close off, because you mentioned them then, the call centre. Your call centre is second to none. I mean, I've only had to call them a few times when things have gone wrong, usually with the ABPs, but they are so good at responding. Is that something you haven't invested in?
So we work with a company called EV Assist or EVA Global, and they actually run the call centre options for many of the CPOs in the UK. But what is amazing about them is because they run, for example, Ionity across Europe. Let's imagine theoretically if there was a firmware issue with a vehicle. Let's just make one up. Let's say something happens with the ID3. By the time we've had 2 calls, they've had 25 on mainland Europe. So their knowledge base is fantastic. But the other thing is they're human beings. And in that moment when you're stressed and you're in a difficult spot at a charger, what you need first of all is a compassionate, empathetic human being, and that's what they're amazing at doing.
They are. They really are amazing at doing that and sorting out issues and crying babies in the rain and trying to help people out on those sort of things. It's they're really good. And also I think that educational point, they are very good at that as well. I've certainly heard some of the conversations. So, yeah, very, very impressed. And I think it is something which your network gets plaudits for. Obviously that they obviously help you a lot with that, but it's noticeable.
I think this is part of the job, though. Part of the job of becoming a leader in charge point network was to take the time to pick the right partners, and that took some time for us to get it right. But I feel, as I say now, the baseline is set. We know how to deliver excellent service, and now we just need to do it on a bigger scale.
Oh, well, you're certainly doing that, Ian. Thanks for your time today. We look forward to coming and seeing your first Kempower hub. We'll make a special journey out for that.
Yeah, indeed. Brilliant. We'll see you there, and thank you for your time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thanks for sticking with us through this one. In the end, we decided that this episode was really too long to put it out as a single episode. It was practically feature movie length. Not quite James Bond length, but too long, basically. So we have split it into 2 episodes, and this seemed like a logical place to leave it for now. If you would like to join us for part 2, then please do so. And in that, Garry and I will discuss a lot of the things that Ian was talking about, and we'll move on to a few other subjects as well, like other charging networks, the improvements that Gary's experienced in his car, SMMT sales figures, and yet another potential replacement for the I-Pace, not from Jaguar, but another potential car that I-Pace owners might want to consider for their next purchase once their current lease or PCP or ownership period, whatever, ends. So please do join us for part 2. If you've enjoyed this one, then do click on like. Don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell so you'll get notifications whenever new videos go up. If you want to watch, if you want to subscribe first, you can do that right now by clicking on my ugly little face over there. And if you want to watch part 2, you can do that by clicking up there. Till next time, this is Abu Dhabi Dude saying so long, take care, see you soon. Bye. Abu Dhabi Dude.